In this video, we're going to look at a new feature that was recently added to CertMS, and that is documentation. Now, you'll notice here that we had a documentation in the previous videos, we didn't look at it, but I have updated our environment here to the most recent version of CertMS, and the immediate thing that you'll notice is that the certificates here under expiring this month are now links. So you can click on any of these and get to where you want to go. But we want to talk about documentation. So documentation is a customer requested feature that we recently added. And it made perfect sense, which is why we added it. And a lot of things within CertMS, it's completely optional whether you want to use it or not. So a couple things that we added. Let's take a look at the very simplest one. If we look at any of our certificates, we added a nice little linked documentation section down here. So this link documentation is a great place to where if you already have documentation that is accessible, say via SharePoint site or a UNC path or anywhere else, you can put a link to that documentation in here. This is just a text field, so anything you put in will go. But if you want to use built-in documentation, then we're going to go over here to this documentation section. From here, just like any of the other ones, we click Add Documentation, and we can now put in our own documentation. So you can see we have title. We'll just go ahead and put some of this in, author, and then we can paste in or type in whatever we want. So the great thing about this is if we already have documentation somewhere, we can actually copy and paste most of that into here. This will recognize a lot of that. So let's see if I can pull up something really easy. Let's see. I'm just gonna pull in. Let's see if I can pull in this. Yeah, so I just pulled this in straight from CertMS.com, and you'll see that I actually pulled in not only some of the formatting, but it also pulled in the images. So you can see now that we have our documentation is, taking shape. We've pretty much just copied and pasted this documentation in here. And I can make adjustments if need be. I can take and I say, hey, I want this to actually be on the left-hand side. So I can make adjustments as needed. And this works out great. So now that we've got our documentation, we can just click Submit. And our new doc has been successfully created, and all of this is stored inside the database. So now if we want to modify our documentation, we can click on the little pencil, just like everything else, and we can completely modify the documentation if we want. And where the documentation is important is now we can associate documentation with certificates. And you'll see in the next video, when we start talking about help desk integrations, how this makes all of CertMS kind of come together into a platform that helps people not only know when their certificates are going to expire, but how to replace them. So let's come through here and let's pick one of these certificates. This is one. So let's say CertMS.local. This certificate right here that's going to expire. We're going to edit this guy. And then I want to now associate my documentation with it. So I'm going to click the little plus sign next to documentation, and I'm going to choose my documentation. So you can see, just like in some of the other options, like the server option here, I have now a list, and this is completely searchable if you have multiple. So we're going to do add documentation. I can click just my add button here, and now my documentation is associated with my certificate. So we're going to submit that and save it. And that is how you can associate documentation with certificates. Now, the great thing is it doesn't matter in this sense. You can associate any documentation, as many pieces of documentation you want with a certificate, and you can associate one documentation with as many certificates as you want. So it's a many-to-many relationship here.